So just a few closing remarks for the plenary part of our conference, and obviously there's still more opportunities for networking at the exhibition and the breakout sessions that will come after lunch. But I wanted to sort of quickly cast ahead and look ahead to some of the things that the TSA will be doing over the coming year to continue to shape and influence the agenda around the way in which we deploy technology at scale and pace to make a difference to our health and care system, but above all to make a difference in the lives of people who rely on those services. And we've heard from Ed just now talking about the view the department has and the ministers have, and the new Secretary of State, who very early on talked about and called for a bonfire of fax machines. It's a remarkable fact that there are huge numbers of fax machines spread out across the NHS as the principal artery of communication in many cases for the way in which systems work. It is a true indictment perhaps of the pace that is missing when it comes to deploying new approaches. And I would just say that this sector in this room is a sector that already straddles that divide between housing and care, because we have within our membership expertise, insight and experience that I hope the department will feel able to draw upon to actually make sure that the ambition of bringing health and care and housing more closely together in this mission around prevention and early intervention a real possibility. And really, I think the issue for us throughout this 2 days has been how do we play our part in shaping the adoption landscape, reshaping the adoption landscape for technology in this country. And part of that is about recognizing, as we've said on a number of occasions from this podium and throughout the conference, it's about recognizing that we're not just talking about the product, the technology. The thing that matters is the difference it makes in people's lives and enabling people to lead the lives they want to lead. And that solution orientation is something I want to come back to. So yes, it's all about people. That is a message that I think was eloquently delivered to us and demonstrated by Kay in her opening remarks at the conference yesterday. And in a way, the way I would frame what she was saying so powerfully was that it's about the question that we ask. Too often the question we ask is, what's wrong with you? What's the matter with you? When the question we should be asking first and foremost, and I think we heard this in the Burstow presentation as well, is what matters to you and how can we help you fulfill the things that matter to you in your lives. And I think in the video that Steve Careful showed, we saw Claire talking about what mattered to her, and that was that she wanted to have an interest, whether it was Barry Manilow being played on the Alexa or the ability to have more control over her life. But that sense of being well-being being a key part of it. And we had Hugh speaking this morning about the digital switch and the end of analog telephony in this country, and indeed the pace of change that is sweeping much of the rest of Europe and the North American continent as well. And I think it's just worth underscoring two things he said to us in his remarks. One was, and I think much clearer than he was last year when he spoke to our conference, was that the analog telephony services will be retired by 2025 at the latest. And that was the difference. Last year, he was hedging. He was not as clear about when it would happen. So I think we need to be mindful of that. And secondly, he said that we have to manage our own fate when it comes to the way in which we respond to the challenge and opportunities. And I took heart from the fact when he referred to the different trade bodies that have an interest in that high category group of most vulnerable people, that this trade association, the TSA, has already been leading from the front in terms of providing guidance and models and so on to support the industry. And I hope we can continue to do yet more of that. Because the opportunity of a digital shift is it offers the ability to be much more data-driven, much more bespoke and personalized in the way in which we deliver our services. And as we heard, the sort of role and opportunities of AI and consumer preference and how they can shape the sort of care that we receive. And of course, we also heard from George Crooks and what is happening in Scotland. And George, I think, underlined the fact that we need to avoid being blinded not just by the kit, but also by the data. Because unless the data is turned into actionable information and intelligence, which is then critical to supporting self-care and the sort of predictive, preventative models that we heard from Esther from Barcelona. And indeed, that compelling story that we heard about proactive care, not just a fantasy, not just an ambition, but delivered at scale to over 300,000 people across Catalonia, I think was very compelling indeed. And we are seeing a growing number of use cases here in the UK, across the United States as well, and elsewhere in the world, for this proactive, increasingly predictive and potentially preventative approach to delivering care. And I underscore the point that was made by two of our presenters today, that you can't just lift and shift ideas from one culture, one context to another. You've got to understand the culture and the context, and that's something which the TSA is clear about wanting to do as well. And harnessing the everyday smart technologies, which I think has been a theme of what Glenn has talked about and others have talked about, and we heard from Steve Careful. The things we use in our homes, the things we choose to wear, the things we carry around in our pockets in terms of smartphones, all of that poses opportunities. And Glenn talked about the whole system demonstrator, and I was the minister who was blessed with the opportunity of presenting the outcomes of that. And I think it was an ill-fated study, and it unfortunately lays now as discredited when it shouldn't be, because actually what it showed was a significant reduction in mortality, a significant reduction in emergency admissions into hospital. But what was not properly factored into that study was that we were bolting technology onto existing service models. We're now asking the question, perhaps we should transform the service itself to leverage the technology more effectively. And that, for me, is the big lesson of the whole system demonstrator. It could deliver, but it couldn't deliver a saving because no one went out to make a saving in the first place. So there was more, perhaps, to get from the whole system demonstrator. And with the growing recognition, again, a theme I think very powerfully coming through at our conference of multi-morbidity that requires greater engagement with those living with long-term conditions and their carer networks, then self-care, self-management, these things are not new. They've been part of the rhetoric and part of the ambition of government policy and local healthcare systems for a very long time. But we now, I think, have the potential through the everyday as well as the specialist devices to gather actionable intelligence and really make a difference. And tapping in as well, as Burstow was so powerfully demonstrated, into those wider networks that buffer us, that help us, that support us. And, well, if this sector does want to be part of this future, then we need to find ways to embed these changes. And we all need to step up our game. And I hope you feel challenged by this conference, but not challenged in a way that leads you to think, oh, I can't do anything about this. There are opportunities, both from the commissioner perspective and from the provider perspective going forward, that care can become more personalised, researched and evidenced. And for most people, what they're looking for, as we heard from Kay at the beginning of the conference yesterday, is they want to get on with their life, even if that is ticking off their bucket list so that they can have a good end of life as well. And again, that point about what matters to you being so important. And again, a theme that's been through this conference is the real importance of solutions and making sure that we are focusing on not just being the purveyors of kit and products and services, but actually focusing on how we can be partners with our local authorities and others in coming up with solutions that deliver better outcomes. And I think just reimagining and repurposing everyday devices in the way that we've heard so clearly articulated during this conference. Another theme that we've heard during this conference is the importance of trust. The importance of trust when it comes to data, the importance of trust when it comes to the quality of care. And that's why the TSA makes no apology for its advocacy for the adoption much more widely than we currently have of the QSF, as not just a standard against which we can all hold ourselves and be proud, but actually also as a tool for driving improvement in this sector. And I would certainly urge people to look afresh at their opportunities coming out of the QSF. But it's not just trust when it comes to quality, it's also trust when it comes to the algorithms and the AI that underpin many of the new offerings that are coming forward. So what's next? Well, what's next is dialogue. And one of the things that struck me over the last couple of days is that there are many people in parallel markets, many people who have an interest in what we have to say, the insights that we have, the expertise that we can bring, not just to grow what we do, but actually to grow a much bigger market for the use of devices and technologies to provide solutions to independent living and actually do that at scale and pace. So what the TSA will be doing over the coming year is working with other sectors to try and find the ways in which we can partner with them to leverage what we have to really make the biggest difference for our customers, for our service users, for our clients. So we have a big agenda at the TSA. It's your organisation, and we need you to be active participants in that agenda. I hope you've enjoyed this conference and that you've been stimulated by it. But as we've said throughout this conference, we're at a moment, an inflection point, an opportunity, and we have to seize that moment. If we do seize that moment, I think the opportunity is now there for us to see many of the ambitions and possibilities that this sector has had for so long become a reality. And if they do, I should just say that when it comes to our work, please do stay tuned, because we will have more to say about some of the ambitions I've just outlined for the work that we are doing as an association on your behalf, influencing and hopefully transforming that landscape for adoption. Enjoy the rest of this conference. Please carry on the networking in the exhibition. Please go to the breakout sessions. Please give us your feedback. We want to continue to improve the quality of this conference. Over 800 people at this conference this year. We want many more next year to continue to get the word out. I just end by saying thank you very much for your time and attention, for your passion and your commitment. Safe journeys when you make your way home. Thank you very much.